Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
You know, I want to start today by just saying that you are the chosen generation. You are. This is the generation. We are the people. We're the ones that are going to turn the tide. We're the ones who are throwing off the chains of idolatry. And I don't mean that in a religious sense. I mean that in the most realistic sense. We don't give a damn about your celebrity. We don't care about your wealth because we know how this system is rigged. That's who we are. And that's what they cannot stop. And that's why they are so feverishly trying to find a replacement to Joe Biden so that we do not get someone as, and I don't mean this as an insult, but milquetoast as Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. I mean milquetoast in the sense that they are going to save capitalism. And yet that's not good enough for the powers that be. But the problem for the powers that be in the Democratic Party, as well as in the Republican Party, is that there are millions of us who don't give a damn anymore. We know the game. We're not impressed by your billions. We know that we'll never be billionaires. Hell, we'll never be millionaires. We can work as hard as we can, and maybe if we work ourselves halfway to death, we can move out of poverty into the middle class or the lower middle class, if we're lucky. That is the upward mobility reality here in the United States. That is the American dream. The American dream, which is actually a nightmare. And what's so beautiful is that there's literally nothing they can do to stop us short of suspending democracy. They're terrified, and they should be, because we're coming for their billions. And see, I'm a nice guy. I'm a generous guy. I honestly, I'm too nice for a lot of you. I think we should leave them with 1 billion. And anything over that, tax the hell out of it and invest in humanity. We're coming for their money. We're coming for their power, economic as well as political power. We're going to get money out of politics, and we're going to start doing it this generation. Because it's either that or barbarism. It's either that or the destruction of our planet. We are going to have to fight furiously in order just to save humanity. All right. Now that that's out of the way, the most laughable and the most desperate Hail Mary that the Democratic establishment could possibly throw, because this is amazing to me. Elizabeth Warren, who basically is saying, look, guys, just play nice. I won't take your toys from you. I won't take your billions from you. Just play nice. I won't really give you all Medicare for all, but we're going to have to get there eventually. So it'll be a long-term goal. That's not enough for the powerful, the establishment. They are so dead set against something as palatable to capitalism as Elizabeth Warren, that they are now considering bringing in the stopper and frisker in chief, Mayor Bloomberg, worth about $58 billion to run for president. And we're being told by MSNBC that this is viable. Listen to this inordinately ridiculous and absurd segment from Meet the Press with Chuck Todd.
In the smoke-filled room, you'd say, on paper, Bloomberg has the right balance of what you want to win a broad election. Maybe not a deep election, but if you're trying to win the ex-suburban Republican, which, by the way, Michael Bloomberg's an ex-suburban, arguably an ex-urban Republican, and at the same time, you care about these core progressive issues like guns and climate, it ain't just somebody buying an election.
Look at the propaganda that's happening right there. Look at that. He's trying to and desperately. It's like the death pangs of the establishment. They're trying their best to redefine what an entire generation has said represents our progressive values. He's trying to say your core progressive values are just guns and the climate. No, those are a part of our progressive values. You know what else is a part of our progressive values? Eat the rich. No billionaires. Because you can't have billionaires without exploitation. That's a core progressive value that every one of you in my audience, I need you to get comfortable with. I need you to embrace it. To whatever varying degree. If you're to the left of me and you want to say no billionaires at all, no millionaires, by all means, you can say that. If you're to the right of me and saying, Ben, you need to relax, then hear me out on this. We'll give them $1 billion and not 1 penny more. Those are the core values, because we have an entire generation that sees that the jig is up. We see the game, and there's nothing they can do to put this back into Pandora's box. What they should have done was to maintain the security blanket that FDR gave America. And actually, he gave capitalism. But they took every year the wealthy, the establishment, the richest people, the people who have zero regard for the humanity of hundreds of millions of people here in this country, and think that we're so easily deluded, we're so easily convinced, we're so easily impressed by their wealth and by everything that they put on television. They think so little of us that they did not believe that there would ever come a day where we would just turn around and say, "F you." Tax the rich. Eat the rich. I'm not impressed with black millionaires, black billionaires. I don't care if you're Oprah, Tyler Perry. I don't care if you're Jay-Z. And I certainly don't care if you're Michael Bloomberg. If you have built your wealth off of exploitation of workers and labor, off of extracting as much wealth as you can from the working class through consumerism, if you have manipulated this government by pouring money into lobbyists and buying politicians, if you have been avoiding your taxes by changing the tax code so that you have no responsibility to the society from which you derive all of your wealth, you have now created a generation who has been on the receiving end of the abject poverty, of the lack of opportunity, of the downward mobility, because it's not upward. We are literally a generation who's doing worse than our parents. And so now this generation has taken a survey of everything around us and said, you know what, even if we did everything precisely correct, our chances of moving up were slim to none, because that is how the system is built. Now you have a generation that has it figured out, and there's nothing that you can do but try to throw a billionaire at us.
But I do think that I don't think that's going to be as problematic.
I think
as it
Republicans,
could have been even a decade.
No, Republicans are ready to hit him on the two issues you just said, right? Climate and guns. They're going to paint him as Elizabeth Warren. He is that extreme, is what they're going to say.
Sure, but Elizabeth Warren's going to paint him as a closet right winger. So in some ways, he could be bookended well. Maybe.
And there you have it. They're doing everything they can. I mean, it is so ridiculous that the panelists on Chuck Todd's show, Meet the Press Daily, couldn't even go with them on it. I didn't even play the worst part of the interview. If you go on Twitter, you'll see the video. It's a 2-minute long video, and the panelists are like, is this guy serious? Is this guy actually paid to make political analyses? That's how ridiculous and far-fetched it was. But they have to put that narrative out there that somehow, and here's what it's wrapped in. It's wrapped in this idea of electability. And so Chuck Todd is trying to conjure up some type of narrative that Michael Bloomberg, because he's going to be too far to the left for Republicans, but too far to the right for radical Elizabeth Warren, then he's going to, be just right. Like this is some kind of Goldilocks porridge story, right? He's just in the middle, just right in the Goldilocks zone. No. That works fine for evolution. That does not work fine for politics. That does not work fine for advancing humanity beyond where we currently are. We have to go to the left. And Michael Bloomberg, I don't care what he says about guns. I haven't even gotten to his stop and frisk policies. I really wanted to do in the entire maybe I'll do another episode next week about his stop and frisk policies, how at the core of everything he did in New York in terms of criminal justice was racist. So I'll talk about the race component of this next week. But this week, it's the class component, because Michael Bloomberg represents a class of people who would rather throw hundreds of millions of their own dollars into a vanity project aimed at stopping society, the same society that they draw their wealth from. They're throwing hundreds of millions of dollars of that wealth at the society to try to keep us from taxing them. In other words, they would rather blow $100 million on a presidential campaign than to spend another $100 million in taxes. Yeah, that's what they're telling us. And what we're telling them is, no, there's literally nothing that you can do to stop this generation from confiscating your unearned wealth and turning it into a contribution to humanity. There's nothing that you can do shy of suspending democracy. And then we'll really see what this country, this American experiment, this experiment in democracy, we'll really see what it was all about all along.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
I think I lied to you, ladies and gentlemen. I said I wouldn't be able to throw a patron party with just one patron, but I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. Welcome aboard to Robert Williams, JD, our latest patron, the only patron from last night. And you know what? Man, let's party. Don't let me see you do that dance, let me see you do that dance, let me do that dance. You know what I appreciate the most about the show now, this iteration of the Benjamin Dixon Show, is that I'm just me, and I'm as crazy and silly as I want to be. And you all rock with me, and I appreciate that. But now, on the serious tip, we have a goal. 500 patrons by the end of the year. That's 217 new patrons. That's 5 patrons a day. Now, some days we get 10 patrons, and listen, it really is a difference. I'm going to be honest with you. It's the difference between me being able to continue doing the show as often as I do with the level of production that I do, and me not being able to do it. And I think, honestly, I scared some of you away yesterday. I've never, when I said I was going to drop a verse or two once we get 500. So maybe I need to adjust that goal and say, the real goal is this. At 500 patrons, I am bringing back the daily live streaming show. I have been slowly but surely building back up the capacity, the equipment. But what 500 patrons would allow me to do would free me up from other constraints and allow me the time to produce, in addition, right, to the podcast. We'll still have the podcast format, a live streaming daily call-in show at 500 patrons that allow me to buy the final equipment that I need to purchase, as well as afford me the time to be able to do it. So 5 new patrons a day between now and the end of the year. Is it a stretch goal? Yes. Are we going to make it? It's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a push, but you can help us do it. Find other people who listen to the show, you talk to about the show, and get them to commit. And I'm not putting a dollar amount to it. You can come in at $1 a month as far as I'm concerned. All right, enough peddling. I don't know for the life of me why anyone supports Tulsi Gabbard at this point. There's nothing progressive about her, but more importantly than that, she is the pick of the Republican Party. Now, for all the criticisms I've given of Hillary Clinton, she was not wrong about this. Tulsi Gabbard is the pick of the Republican Party. Look at Breitbart.com. Not only is it a conservative right-wing outlet, it is the most successful and commercially successful white supremacist site on the internet. There are other white supremacist sites that are far more just openly, rabidly racist, but they're not commercial successes. Breitbart is a commercial success, and they've built their success off of white supremacy, off of male supremacy, and just basically off of hate in general. I bring up Breitbart.com because Tulsi Gabbard has made yet another appearance on Breitbart yesterday, And in the last 2 days, Breitbart.com has published over 18 articles in support of Tulsi Gabbard. Now, while I don't believe in absolutism and I don't believe in the extreme of anything my opponent likes, I have to hate, right? I don't believe in that trope. But I do think that you should pause and consider for a second, what is it about Tulsi Gabbard that makes her the number one pick of the conservative movement in this country? And when you look at it, when you listen to her language in this clip from the podcast they released yesterday, and tell me if she is not blowing dog whistles that conservatives and bigots can hear clearly.
You have said some things on immigration I like quite a bit, that we can't have an open border, for example. Yep. That you differ from a lot of your colleagues on that, on the Democratic side.
I look at every issue, whether it's domestic policy or foreign policy, based on what I believe is in the best interest of our country and based on the substance of the actual policy, not being so reactive to saying, well, I've got to be for this because those guys are against that or whatever. And the same applies to immigration. The reality is that we do not have a nation if we don't have borders. It's a false choice for people to say, you're anti-immigrant if you support secure borders. That's just not the case. I think that we can and we must have a secure border policy that's actually effective and works, and also reform our immigration system so that it works for our country. It can be a safe, secure border along with a humane immigration policy and achieve both objectives.
So first and foremost, she is contributing to this false narrative that we actually have Democratic candidates who want open borders. And while there is a faction of the left that wants open borders, there's not a single presidential candidate who has said anything about or remotely anything about open borders. And so what she's doing is she's weaseling her way into favor with conservatives by not challenging that lie. And she has no problem doing this all the time. She's feeding them the dog whistles, the secure, listen, the border has never been as secure as it was underneath the previous deporter-in-chief, Barack Obama. And so the entirety of Donald Trump's fear-mongering around the border has been a dog whistle, not a problem for which he's providing a policy solution. It's been a way of rounding up the troops, rallying the troops around their bigotry. And Tulsi Gabbard is right dead smack in the heart of whitesupremacistcentral.com. And she is forwarding this idea instead of challenging it. And of course, they turn around and put out all these positive and flattering articles around her. She is 100% a conservative plant, and she is there to take down Bernie Sanders, because who else is supporting her? Who else? What other group of voters tacitly support her or tangentially support her, or like, oh, she would be my second pick? Nobody. Not Warren supporters, not Biden supporters, not Yang supporters. The only people who are close as you know why? Let me finish that last sentence. The only people who have any proximity to her support, to supporting her, to being anyone who's even remotely close to being supportive of her, are Bernie Sanders supporters. And the reason why is because Tulsi Gabbard provides cover for people who are more anti-establishment than they are anti-white supremacy, who are more, quote unquote, anti-establishment than they are anti-racism, anti-bigotry, anti-homophobia, anti-conservatism. They are more. She provides this resting place. Like when we came out of 2016, it was a mess. It was a shit show. But now we have gotten to a point where we're actually having substantive policy disagreements between the two front runners. I mean, Joe Biden has to go, but you have Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, and we are having policy disagreements. And what we haven't been having is a relitigation of the 2016 election. And what Tulsi Gabbard is providing, she's providing a central rallying location for people who are more interested in relitigating 2016 because they have built their entire careers and they have built their entire online presence off of their hatred and their fixation for Hillary Clinton. And there are some of those people who are still Bernie Sanders supporters. But if you take Bernie Sanders out of this for whatever reason, if Bernie Sanders is not in this race, those people will go to Tulsi Gabbard. So you tell me, who is the biggest threat to Bernie Sanders? It's not Elizabeth Warren supporters. I've gone through this. But more importantly than that, whether the politics aside, right? Let's set aside primary politics. Tulsi Gabbard is playing dog whistles. She is blowing dog whistles, supporting the lies of the conservative premise, which is a lie. She's not challenging it, and she's doing it to weasel her way into favor to be able to get more media attention. And the more media attention she gets, the bigger threat she becomes to Bernie Sanders, precisely for the reasons I have outlined for a long time.
Pretty white TT. 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 Pretty white TT.
You reached the Benjamin Dixon Show voicemail. Leave your message and we'll respond live on air.
How you doing, Ben? This is Wayne. I'm called out of Richmond, Virginia. I called your show, I want to say it was in 2018, back when you were still doing the live callers at the time. And one of the things I remember talking to you about was my career aspirations of being a future politician. What actually motivated me to get involved was the results of the 2016 election. The only thing that Donald Trump has done for me is motivate me to take this course of action. So currently, I am taking online classes to get a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science and government. 2020 will mark my third year, and I am set to graduate in October of 2021.
That's what's up.
So, man, I'm politically minded. You know, I keep up with everything. I listen to your show often. I have not become a patron yet. I will at some point. The plan is to start in the Virginia House of Delegates, but the ultimate goal is a seat in the House of Representatives. Yes, as a Democrat, yes. I just want to ask you, do you know anyone who has went into politics and what route they've taken?
Wayne, thanks so much for the call. First and foremost, man, congratulations on your progress towards your bachelor's in political science. I have a degree in political science as well, and I think political science is probably one of the most important social sciences out possible because it's the science of cooperation. And if we are ever going to go anywhere as a humanity, if we're going to survive, we're going to have to cooperate. So congratulations on that. And to answer your question, yeah, I know plenty of people who've gone into politics, and everybody's route is different. And I understand your concern and your frustration, because if you're completely on the outside of the system, you really do not know how to get on the inside. And it's really cliquish. It's really like a club, and it's difficult. It's difficult to get inside of the system. And then it's even more difficult to get inside of the system and maintain the passion that you had that pushed you towards it. My recommendation is for you to get out there and just start talking, analyzing and talking. What people need more than anything else right now are people who can help them see clearly. This doesn't mean that you need to go and start a podcast, but by all means, everybody else has one, so why not you? But it could just mean being locally active and being that local voice and having something to say about everything. Literally, just get out there and start talking, start getting involved. Here's the other thing. The most important thing that you could do is to get involved. Get involved in your local organizations. Get involved in your local party. A fascinating thing has happened here in Atlanta. And this is the best example I can give you. My wife and I, we are new to Atlanta. We've only been here for 2 years, and both of us got involved in organizations, and all we did was worked. Like literally, my wife got involved with her sorority sisters, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and she hit the ground running, and she works, she volunteers, she's on the scene, and she's not on the scene to be seen. She's on the scene to work. And I did the same thing in my local church, because I didn't go to church at all while I was in Boston. So I guess I was trying to make up for lost time, but I actually just enjoy the community. I enjoy the community that we have at that church. And so I volunteered there all the time. And I didn't realize, nor did my wife realize, that 2 years had gone by and we had consistently worked and volunteered. And because of that, now we have influence in very large organizations in the city of Atlanta. I mean, to be realistic, like on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like Tyler Perry influential, we're still a 2. We're 1 or 2. You know what I mean? But it all happened. We have that kind of inroads. We have those relationships. We're inserted into the community because we worked. Now, everyone listening to me, you have the capacity to do that same thing. Find an organization that you're passionate about, whether it could be your local DSA chapter. It could be your local Urban League chapter. It could be your local NAACP. It could be whatever. There's any number of organizations that you can just make sure you're passionate about it, and time will pass by. And before you know it, you would be an influencer in that organization, not because you were trying to be an influencer, but because you were honestly trying to do the work. That's the most important thing I can tell you about that.
Hi, Ben. My name is Jason. I'm calling from right here in Atlanta. I've been listening to your show every day for 6 months, and I've been putting off giving you a call because I wanted to wait until I could make some sense, but I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm calling you now because you've shook me up these last couple of days, and I got a comment and I got a question for you after that. And the comment is just, I have to say that my brain melts when I think about the fact that in this coalition that's been built around our candidate, there are people who want to block out our differences and who insist that there's no room for talk about the individual characteristics and groups and, yes, identities that make up this coalition. Not me, us, right? It ain't about me and people who look like me. It's about us coming together. And this identity politics thing, anyone who wants to reach for a higher level of discourse and a more effective critique based upon class, all of us who feel that way are in agreement that the rich bastards in control use racism and sexism and homophobia and fear of all kinds as their primary tools to screw us, divide us up, and cut us down. We're all in agreement about that. And if that's the case, why in the world are so many people talking about how we shouldn't get together and fight those tools on the individual battlegrounds of those, yes, identity issues? I'm with you, man. You're right. I mean, I live in Atlanta, and I see that we're not going to make it if he can't speak those ideas to black folks and get it and make a connection.
Hey, thanks so much for that call, man. That call means a lot. Now, you had a question at the very end that got cut off, so maybe you'll call back and pose a question another time. But just your observations. I mean, that's exactly right. If we know that the wealthy use race and sexism and homophobia and all these other tools of bigotry in order to screw us financially, it's like we came up with the wrong solution. We came up with the solution to fight back against the wealthy and the powerful using identity as a way of exacerbating the income inequality in this country. And we said the solution is to not address identity. No. And that's exactly what the right wing wants from you. That's why Charlie Kirk was able to get along so splendidly with Kyle Kalinske. That's exactly what they want, because if you don't talk about it, you don't weaken, you don't actually undermine, you're not subversive, you are complicit with the very power structure that you think you're trying to fight. So Jason, that was actually a really wonderful observation. Thanks for sharing that. One more voicemail.
Hi, Ben. This is Sage from Seattle. Just listening to your show from a couple of days ago. You had this discussion about coping skills that kind of resonated with me because, like, I work with kids, so we often talk about coping skills as a way to deal with your problems in a constructive way so you're not having tantrums and things of that nature. But there is, there needs to be a conversation as well about, if you're going to have a conversation about coping skills, you should also have conversations about, problem solving, critical thinking, collective liberation, right? So it's a great reminder of that, and sort of putting that, a term that we use at work. I hadn't thought about it in a sort of a broader context like that. You can apply it to all kinds of things. But so I appreciate that. I always appreciate your analysis and keep up the good work. I just have one more question, which is on a more important note. When you have your music in the middle of the episode, I was always wondering, when are you going to just stop making all those guttural noises and actually finally drop a verse? Like, I know if you ever wrote a verse, it would totally be fire. So, all right, thank you. I love your show, so keep up the good work. Thanks. Bye.
Hey man, you guys, I love my audience. You guys are great. But to answer your point, I originally offered to, drop a couple of bars once we hit 500 patrons. But I think I've offered something that is actually far more meaningful. And that 500 patrons, we will bring back the live call-in show, video show. Because I think it's important for this to continue, this discourse that I have with you, and that in the live show you have with me. That's what's so critical. Like the live call-in show, like when you're able to call in and help guide the conversation, and we get even more nuance and more revelation out of our conversation, our dialectic that we may have. But to your first point, man, yeah, I absolutely know that we have been conditioned just to survive capitalism. Some people do better than others. Some people don't have that pressure, but the majority of Americans do. The majority of Americans live on edge. And I'm just blown away that more people have not snapped. And you honestly can compare it to like people growing up in war zones. They become accustomed to it. They become hardened to it. They become desensitized to it. But then they also suffer from they also suffer from PTSD. And I tell you, this hit me the other day. I'm like people, how many people honestly don't know if they have enough money to pay rent on the first of the month, and they are working? Like that's like the story of everybody, with the rare exception, maybe 5% of America doesn't really know what that's like and has no point of reference to that. Even if it's 10% of America, that means the majority of Americans are living either paycheck to paycheck or are underwater. And that is stressful. That is extremely stressful, but yet we're just going through our lives like we're okay. In actuality, we're not okay. We're coping. And so thank you for bringing that up. And then all the other components that are involved, not only with coping, but also having the critical analysis to actually affect the common liberation. And I think this show, our conversation, is a part of that. I do have one more voicemail.
Hi, I am calling from California, and my question is, are you willing to become an official surrogate for Bernie Sanders? And if no, why not? Have you already been asked? And if you have not been asked and you're willing, then how can your listeners, like me, support you in making this happen? Either way, sending you love and appreciation for everything that you already do. Thank you.
Okay, first, let me say, I absolutely love the love that we have, like the love that you have, the audience has for me, and the love that I have for you. I think it is you know what I hate more than anything else? I hate people who have platforms and they use it to abuse their followers, and they use it to abuse the followers that actually support them the most. I see this all the time on Twitter. People who beat up their followers, and I'm like, this person is literally supporting you. This person is literally trying to show you love, and you're attacking them. I mean, that is some abusive shit that I see all the time, and that's never something that I would ever do, because I totally respect the fact that you appreciate my work and that you want to interact with me. That means something. I value that. That's why I'm like, I used to be a follow snob. Like I'm going back and I'm just following anybody who interacts with me on a regular basis and we have a good time on Twitter. I'm following you back because now I'm interested in you. And I honestly, like, that's huge. And I don't, here's the catch. As all this, idealistic stuff that I talk about, all of this, navel gazing and trying to be better people and trying to be above the fray, all of that, all this stuff that we talk about, love and compassion and empathy that I try to talk about. I think you also know that underneath that, I'm the most fierce fighter that you could have on your team. That I would literally be a part of a revolution. That I'm that dude that my love is action, right? My empathy moves me to action. So, I just love it. I mean, I appreciate you as much as you all appreciate me, and I mean that. Now, I also love this question because it's one of those questions that makes me put up or shut up. Would I be a surrogate for Bernie Sanders? Without equivocating, yes, I would, because I think it's so critical for us to get him elected. And again, I know, hey, if you're a Warren supporter, I absolutely love Elizabeth Warren. I would not be opposed to her being president. I just would prefer her to be the vice president. Right. And but to that end, yeah, I mean, I would put my reputation on the line to support Bernie Sanders. That's really what you're asking a person to do when they become a surrogate. Have I been asked? No, I've never been asked. Do I want to be asked? I don't know. I don't know. I guess I kind of would leave that to the audience. If you all wanted to do something like that, I would leave that to you, because I'm diligently working on a media company. I'm diligently working to make sure that we have this progressive media space, and I'm sure they could work one and the same, side by side. I don't think that they are competing goals. But at the same time, it's like, that's where my focus is right now. I would absolutely consider it, because you know what? It's time to put up or shut up. It's time for us to all hands on deck and make this thing happen. One last thing before we go. As I was recording the show, we had a patron come in and increase, basically double their pledge. So you know what that means. One time for the road. Special shout out to Alan R. Thank you for multiplying your pledge significantly. I really appreciate it. Sincerely. Special thanks to everyone who supports the show. All of you who share, who like, who subscribe. You make this happen. Thank you for the comments, all the comments on YouTube, wherever you leave comments. I read them. And I appreciate them. Again, I appreciate you as a listener, because you appreciate me as a content creator. And it really is it's a symbiotic relationship that is necessary. And I think, I know what this next phase is really about. This next phase is about using our platforms, using this. And I say this is yours as much as it is mine. Like, we use this platform to move the masses, to affect change, to move people into action. And it may not always be protests. It may not be boycotts. Sometimes it is like the first caller who was like, he's getting into politics. That matters. So I just want to encourage every single one of you to get out there and do your thing and to do your part. And I hope that my voice actually pushes you in that direction. Have a great weekend, everyone.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.